is going on, Only Playbook fans? We're back for another episode here. Week 11 preview. We had a pretty exciting football game already transpired last night. Titans Packers. We'll talk all about it. I'm Sweetcar. I got Shishot. Shishot, hopefully your voice is going to let you get through the entire episode, man.
I got to be here for the people, man. There's a lot of playoff implications happening. Can't let them down now.
Dude, enter the Cam Gigantic. You got to give the people what they want clip. Again, yeah, a lot of playoff implications, a lot of big key injuries of players that have gone down for teams. So a lot to unpack. Without further ado, guys, let's kick things off with Water Cooler Talk. Finally, we got a pretty decent Thursday night football game. The Titans traveled to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Titans on the road, 3-point underdogs. Over-under was sitting at 42. Derrick Henry and the running Titans did run away with this victory. 27-17 final. 3-point underdog spread. Win the game outright. Over 42 cashes. Now Tennessee somehow sitting at 7-3, and Green Bay season may just about be wrapped up at 4-7 now. The simple part about this game is despite the defense that was lacking for Green Bay, I think they had every opportunity to come out and win this game. Their defense struggled mightily, though. You can't have Ryan Tannehill throwing for over 300 yards against you, 333 in the air, 2 touchdowns. Did have an interception, which didn't really end up mattering. Derrick Henry basically doing his best CMC impression. 2 completions. Count that, 2 completions passing, 4 yards, 1 touchdown pass, 28 carries for only 87 yards rushing, but didn't matter. 1 rushing touchdown. Then he also caught 2 passes for 45 yards. So he did just about everything. I had to go back and look at when the second completion occurred, but it was when he was a direct snap quarterback and he threw like the shovel pass forward to the guy coming across. So I was like, when the hell did he throw 2 passes? But that was the other pass that only ended up getting like 1 yard. But it doesn't matter. Perfect completion percentage for him. Had a monstrous fantasy day. Treylon Burks coming out party. Nice to see, as all of the other rookie receivers, it seems like this year, have had their own versions of coming out parties. And Treylon finally having his 7 catches, 111 yards. Interesting to see the pass catchers on the Titans actually produce. Robert Woods, 6 catches, 69 yards. Austin Hooper catching a touchdown pass from not only Ryan Tannehill, but also from Derrick Henry. 4 catches, 36 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And even though it doesn't really matter as much, Dontrell Hilliard had a touchdown as well, which that route and that whole play call was fantastic, just watching it unfold. And on the Green Bay side, I mean, if you started Aaron Rodgers, he had a pretty decent day, 227 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Not a lot of rushing getting done on the ground. Aaron Jones, 12 carries, only 40 yards rushing. Salvages fantasy day with 6 catches, still only gaining 20 yards. A.J. Dillon, non-existent, 6 carries, 13 yards, 1 catch, 10 yards. And, the almighty Christian Watson continues to flourish. Half of his catches turned into touchdowns, 4 catches, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Randall Cobb comes back from injury and immediately makes an impact, 6 for 73. Allen Lazard led the team with targets, 11 targets, only brought down 5 of those for 57 yards. Again, the story of this game, Derrick Henry, not efficient, but when it mattered, they just kept rushing the ball, running for 3-4 yards a gain, and the Packers defense couldn't get off the field. So it was really, really encouraging to see the Titans be able to not have Derrick Henry have his best game, but the fact that he's in the backfield just makes the play action, all of the passing game open up, and it's nice to see some guys actually flourish on the pass catching side for Tennessee. Again, Tennessee 7-3, sitting pretty atop that division. Green Bay now 4-7, looking for answers. Is their season over, or are you guys still not counting Green Bay out?
Yeah, I don't think you count Green Bay out, but the lack of defense is like, I think that Aaron Rodgers was like, oh, probably going to win every single one of the games, and he was very confident with that. But you're not going to do that when your defense is as atrocious as they played yesterday. So they're still going to win games, I think. They still have enough, offensive firepower. But in the long run, their defense is going to be their Achilles heel.
Yeah, I mean, I would even take the Giants over them, right? So I think there's a bigger chance of 3 teams making it out of the NFC East than the Packers making it. So it's going to be tough for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, like you said, they may still have some wins on their schedule, getting to play the Lions and the Bears maybe again. But yeah, 7 losses already. The division seems like it's wrapped up, so you're going to have to try to sneak in.
Vikings could wrap up the division by week 12. That's insane.
That's absolutely insanity. And we'll talk more about that, but just think about how much planning you can do if you already lock up the division like 6 weeks before the season ends. That's very, very ahead of the curve, something that Minnesota's probably never done for themselves. So it'll be interesting to see how the playoff scenarios shake out, but it is not looking pretty for Green Bay as Tennessee takes the cake, now sitting at 7-3. Couple things to note before we jump into dreaded injuries. The Blizzard game is no more. Buffalo and Cleveland are officially moving the game to play in Detroit. All of the memes, all of the Devin Singletary is 5'7", 6 foot of snow. The amount of recycling I saw that tweet and meme did last night was a little too high. So I'm glad that all gets put to bed. But it is scary because all of the fantasy players that were like, okay, well, in this weather, anything goes. All these guys are questionable. The pass catchers on the Cleveland side and all that snafu. Now you can basically start everybody because you're playing in a dome, and Cleveland's defense sucks. So you're confidently deploying pretty much everybody on the Buffalo side, and you're desperate on the Cleveland side. They're going to be down, so their pass catchers all of a sudden become attractive starters as well. We'll dive more into that game a little bit later, but no more Blizzard game, which I think that would have been exciting to see, but maybe not if you're a fantasy owner of one of the players in that game. The Philadelphia Eagles all of a sudden get gashed in the run for 2 games, and they were like, no more of this nonsense. After Jordan Davis goes down with that high ankle sprain, last 2 games, they gave up 152 yards on the ground and 168 yards on the ground. So I guess the jury was in, or out, if you will, with how to beat Philadelphia, just run it right up the gut. But you know what they did? They went out and got 2 veterans, Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. Who knows how much those guys still have left in the tank, but the name is scary enough. And again, if they can just be rotational pieces and one guy comes in to spell the other guy, and Jordan Davis only a high ankle sprain, so he's going to be back sooner rather than later. All of a sudden, their defensive line, I guess the weak link of their defense, is not looking like a weak link anymore with those big bodies.
Just for some people that don't know who those players are, or who don't know who some of those players are, those are 2 of the top 5 defensive tackles in the NFL over the last decade. That's not there. That's not there.
Again, they're definitely not the players they once were, but like you said, they got both of them, and their starting defensive tackle is going to be back in about a week or 2 weeks. So it's going to be truly a rotation thing where they only have to play when they're fresh, and that's even scarier when you have those names rotating in and out, especially on second and third down when the offensive line is exhausted. Let's jump into injuries. I highlighted kind of the key injuries that I think will come into play this week. If I missed out on somebody, feel free to jump in, and I'm sure we'll touch them whenever we get into their game that they're playing as well. Couple guys to highlight. Devontae Adams questionable to play on Sunday. He's been limited all week, but he has practice, so I think that's encouraging, and I expect him to play on Sunday. Other pass catchers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, are questionable, and they practiced all week, so they should play. I think there's a lot of optimism from the camp that Mike Williams says he's going to play. Keenan Allen says this is the best he's felt in so long. I know that's probably one route run and pulled hammy away from him being out for another 4 or 5 weeks. I feel a lot better with Mike Williams coming in and deploying Mike Williams than I do with Keenan Allen, just because Keenan Allen, his durability has become such a prevalent question over the last 4 or 5 years. So even if you have Keenan Allen and he's 100% playing, I think you're still erring on the side of caution. I think if you have Mike Williams, you probably feel a little bit more confident deploying him. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford is going to play, no longer has an injury designation. It's just going to be a matter of who is he going to throw the football to with Cooper Kupp out. Lamar Jackson also is going to play. He had been out dealing with something, but it does look like he's going to play. Gus Edwards and Mark Andrews practiced all week. They're listed as questionable, but they both should play. So looks like they're going to get their whole, I guess, what they do have right now in terms of being on the field and healthy. Jerry Jeudy for the Broncos is officially out, as is Mecole Hardman and Juju for the Chiefs. Mecole Hardman's on the IR. Juju's not playing with a concussion. MVS was ill, but he is going to play. But this bodes a big question. Do you deploy Kadarius Toney? And if you are deploying Kadarius Toney, you start to play the who would you start this guy over game, because they are playing against the Chargers, who are absolutely awful. Points should be had. How confident are you guys deploying Kadarius Toney this week?
Let's play that game. Would you start, like, if this was yesterday, I would have started Kadarius Toney over Christian Watson probably. I would have been really pissed off. I would have started him over Brian Robinson, over Gibson. There's a lot of players. I think I would even started him over like other number one, like Amari Cooper. Mm-hmm. Like some of these wide receiver ones.
Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Deontay Johnson, just the guys that are on my team. I mean, yeah. I would start Kadarius Toney over any of those guys. I wish I had him.
So, okay, fine. Since I have him, we are playing this game. Out of my receivers, who do you feel comfortable benching to start Kadarius Toney? Because I'm in a situation where Deebo Samuel plays Monday night against Arizona. I have not liked Deebo Samuel. I am almost inclined to bench Deebo Samuel, but it's going to be one of those where if Deebo's on my bench and he goes off, I'm going to be upset. But I wouldn't. I also, at the same time, he hasn't been great. And They have too many other guys. So Deebo Samuel's there. I have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Right now, T. Higgins is starting. They're playing against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 31st against opposing receivers in terms of fantasy points. So I think fantasy points are going to be had there. And there's a chance I get Mike Williams back, who's going against Kansas City. And if Mike Williams is healthy, out of all those guys, is there anybody that you're like, you know what? Honestly, I'm going to start Kadarius Toney over one of those guys.
Yeah, Mike Williams. Yeah, definitely. I'm starting Kadarius Toney over Mike Williams. I mean, Mike Williams is a guy who's coming off an injury, and I don't know as far as the practice is concerned. I think they were doing individual reps, like they're not even getting in there and practicing with the team. I like Toney more than Mike Williams this week.
Yeah, from a health standpoint, I'm always I err on the side of caution when it comes to coming back from injuries. I typically don't even start any guys that come back from injuries. Like right now, I'm debating if I should even start Mark Andrews because I have Cole Kmet, who's a viable starter. So I might not even start Andrews this week. So if I'm not starting someone like Andrews, I'm definitely thinking twice about starting Mike Williams when you have other options like Kadarius Toney. But I think I would probably bench one of the Bengals. It's tough for me to start two players on the same team. You kind of just have to bite the bullet and start one of them, and it's probably going to have to be T. Higgins. But if it's down to that, then man, that's tough. I don't know. I need to look more into this. At the end of this recording, we'll come back to this topic.
Perfect. I need help. You guys need to help me get my first victory since clearly I'm doing you guys a favor. So we're all working as a team. Collusion, massive collusion. We'll talk more about my team here in a little bit. Guys, I need to mention DeAndre Hopkins dealing with a hamstring injury that kind of surfaced out of nowhere. Cliff Kingsbury said it's not as severe as the one he was dealing with last year. It sounds like the extra day of rest because they play on Monday. They're leaning towards he's going to play. So that's good news for Hopkins owners. Kyler is still questionable though. He didn't sound as confident about Kyler. It sounded like he was like, yeah, the one extra day of practice or the extra day of rest will help, but he wasn't as, he should play as he was with Hopkins. So Kyler's definitely one to monitor. Pass catchers for the Browns. David Njoku has said he is going to play Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. He's been a great tight end in fantasy this year when he has played on the field, and the Browns expect to be down against Buffalo, so that could be a nice sneaky start. Unfortunately, Ezekiel Elliott is back, and it looks like he's going to play. So if you're Tony Pollard or if you're a Tony Pollard owner,
or if you're just anybody that watches football,
yeah, or if you're a football enjoyer, this is just bad news bears for Tony Pollard and the Bears and the Cowboys offense and their running game. So I think at best it's probably going to be a split carry situation, and it's Minnesota's defense. So I really don't know how to feel. If you have Zeke, are you throwing him in right away? If you have Pollard, are you still sticking with starting Pollard? Like, where are you guys at on that and knowing that they're going against Minnesota's run defense?
Vikings run D sucks. We just lost Dalvin Tomlinson, who's one of the best defensive tackles in football at stopping the run. So, yeah, I'm starting Pollard. And I actually don't have Pollard, but I have Zeke in one of my leagues, and I've been rolling with Zeke and Mixon for the first 6 weeks of the season, and it's been okay. But coming off of an injury, I'm always just scared. So I'm going to start somebody else in place of Zeke for 1 week and see how this split situation goes. I do know that Dallas and the whole organization loves Zeke like there's no tomorrow. So he's going to get his touches. So, I think he'll be usable against the Vikings. Yeah.
So we'll see. I think, again, I have Pollard. I'm still pretty certain that I'm going to start him just because you said guy coming off injury, they're probably going to shoulder the workload as much as they love him, which again, it's so apparent to the rest of the world how much the Cowboys love Zeke. If they're, positioning themselves for a playoff run, then they probably want to make sure that he stays healthy. So again, they could ease him in, but I would still start Pollard. And then Derek Stingley Jr., man, nice rookie cornerback for Houston, as if Houston's defense, already wasn't struggling enough stopping the run. Now they lose one of their top corners. He is officially out this week as well. Those are all of the injuries I have. Anybody else that you guys feel worth mentioning or highlighting?
We'll talk about this in the Eagles game, but Dallas Goedert is in the IR, so he won't be playing.
Yep.
And
Goddard on the IR.
And then Marquise Goodwin supposed to come back this Monday night.
Okay.
I mean, not Marquise Goodwin. Sorry.
Brown?
Hollywood Brown.
Oh, yeah. Hollywood Brown. Yes, Hollywood Brown. Yep. That we'll touch on those two as we get to the games. That's it for injuries, guys. Let's jump into the rundown. 4 teams on bye this week: the Miami Dolphins, the Seattle Seahawks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of fantasy players that are going to be on your bench not playing. So obviously look elsewhere if you haven't already. First game on the board, the Chicago Bears and the Atlanta Falcons face off in Atlanta. Atlanta at home favored by 3, over under sitting at 49 points. I was victim to this last week, and I think every person that doesn't have this guy that's playing against him is going to be a victim of Justin Fields. Justin Fields, another field day against the 25th ranked defense against fantasy quarterbacks. So again, nothing is leading me to believe that this matchup is going to slow down Justin Fields at all. If anything, having no Khalil Herbert, having Justin Fields, it should be a Fields and Montgomery read options day for galore against Atlanta. I'm looking at Cole Kmet. You talked about him, Shishot. He's been a nice option the last 3 weeks. 5 touchdown passes caught, or 5 touchdown catches in the past 3 games. And so I think you probably ride the hot hand. I mean, again, Atlanta doesn't defend the tight ends well, 27th against defense against tight ends. They're defending the tight end in terms of fantasy points. And if there's one person that the ball is getting thrown to at least somewhat consistently, it's Cole Kmet. So if there's one pass catcher on that team right now you're trusting, it's Kmet. And on the Falcons side, I mean, Marcus Mariota against this Bears defense that, loves to give up fantasy points and points in general becomes a streamable option. You're looking at the running back side because you expect them to be able to run the football against Chicago, but who do you feel comfortable starting here? Are you deploying Cordero Patterson? Do you utilize the pass catching abilities of Tyler Algier, or is it the Venn diagram of the Kansas City Chiefs, but in Atlanta Falcons form, where Caleb Huntley is a small little sliver in the middle? I mean, who do you feel comfortable out of these 3 guys starting against a porous Bears defense?
I think Cordero Patterson. He's been a stud. I mean, whenever he gets the touches he deserves, he plays like a number 1 running back in the league. For some reason, he had like 5 touches last week, and they lost the game. I hope they learned a valuable lesson after that lack of touches situation. I think when Cordero Patterson gets 15 or more touches, he produces numbers that are out of this world. And I think they know that, and I think they're going to try to shift this back over to CPAT's world, because he was coming off of an injury, and they were kind of easing him into some stuff. But I think it's back to him being the lead horse here, and Algier kind of coming in when he needs to. And I think Huntley is going to not even be in the Venn diagram. It's going to be one of those diagrams, but he's going to be like up here.
Cordero Patterson is also one of those guys, is like Eckler, who's very aware of his fantasy football owner, involvement in fantasy football. So I think he tweeted out, he apologized to all of his fantasy owners, and he's also a guy coming off of an injury. That's why he probably didn't have as many carries last game. But yeah, out of all those guys, I think I like Cordero Patterson as well. I mean, upside is so much higher with him. He's like the Swiss Army knife for that team.
But yeah, then, I mean, Drake London gets a pretty streamable matchup against the Bears as well. Again, if we're expecting points to be had, it means that fantasy days could be nice for fantasy owners in this game. And then Kyle Pitts, you just start him and you suffer, right, Shishot? I mean, what else can you do with Kyle Pitts?
Not this week. He's
Cole Kmet to the rescue?
Yeah, I'm actually 3rd in that league now, and me and the second place guy are tied 7-3. And I'm projected to lose by 15, and I'm like, shit, I cannot get 2.5 points from Kyle Pitts this week. So instead of going for the boom, I'm not even going to risk the bust and just start Dolchich instead, and hopefully there's something there.
Hopefully there's a floor with Dolchich, because I'm on the Dolchich train as well.
Right now there's no floor. There's no ceiling and there's no floor with Dolchich. So.
Yeah, well, they're the worst scoring offense in the NFL, so it's really risky to start a player on that offense. But sometimes you got to be the ones. So that's all I got for Bears Falcons. Shishot, take us to the next matchup on the board.
All right, man. We were gonna be going to the frozen tundra in Buffalo, but instead we're going to Detroit. Browns visit the Bills. Bills are having a home game in Detroit in Ford Field. Buffalo's projected to be favored by 8 points as of Friday. Over under is 49.5. So in my opinion, this is going to be a beatdown, probably one of the biggest beatdowns of the year. Josh Allen has been just, he's been having a lot of trouble managing games. Like we talk about all these game managing quarterbacks, these point guard type of quarterbacks everywhere. And if you really think about it, that's his biggest weakness. He's just like a gunslinger. He's a very Brett Favre-esque quarterback in this league. And he actually leads the league in interceptions now, and that's just not something you want from your quarterback. I don't even want to say a good quarterback. No quarterback should lead the league in interceptions. I don't care how much of a risk taker you are. You should never be leading the league in interceptions. Those are just opportunities you're giving the other team, and it shows up on the standings. They're 6-3 and having some issues now. Now they're like 7th in the playoff standings. Like or 6th or 7th. It's pretty outlandish how a number 1 seed just dropped so significantly because of a quarterback's mistakes. So I think, he's learned all of that at the end of every game. He always says, it's all on me. It's all on me. Well, let's see, man. Let's see all the improvements you make after taking all this blame for all these problems. And I think we're just going to see a Josh Allen who's just going to come out here and just take care of business. And I think some of the things that are going to be relevant as far as fantasy goes, well, you're going to be starting Nick Chubb regardless, right? That's a standard. Kareem Hunt could have some work if there's a lot of passing options available, but I'm not banking on that. And then the 2 receivers the Browns have, Cooper, you start, obviously. And then DPJ, nice floor with back-to-back double-digit days. So he's an option there as well. But just be very, very cautious because the Bills' defense is 2nd in points allowed. No matter, I know it's easy to see, like, oh, Bills' offense, really good. That means my wide receivers should get opportunities. Well, that works only in Kansas City. That shit doesn't work in Buffalo because the Bills' defense is actually good versus the Kansas City defense. So just be careful about how confident you feel starting wide receivers against the Bills' defense. On the other side, you start Josh Allen, you start Singletary, you start Diggs, and you start Gabe Davis, and you start Dawson Knox. Why do you start Gabe Davis with emphasis this game? Well, some of the things, I think this is probably one of the more fun facts that most people don't know. Gabe Davis has actually outsnapped Diggs in every single game this year, except for the game he was out. So he's on the field. He's on the field. He has opportunities every play. The reason he's not leading the team in points or the NFL and receiving yards or anything like that is because, of the chemistry Josh Allen has with Diggs. But when it comes to opportunities, or if there's a number 1 cornerback on the other side, Ward is back for the Browns, so he puts up a little bit of a fight against Diggs, which means it could open up things for Gabe Davis significantly. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, Knox, I think Knox is kind of catching fire as of late. He's been getting more and more opportunities every single week. So when Josh Allen's throwing you the ball, I guess even the tight end option becomes a viable start.
Yeah, this game just drastically changes going from snowstorm Buffalo to indoor in Detroit. Man. And I'm playing against Josh Allen, and I'm playing against David Njoku and Amari Cooper and all the idiots on the Brown side who are expected to get no fantasy points before they shifted this. So now I'm just like sadness. I'm just like, okay, great. This is just going to be Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, and then the other team having to catch up and get a bunch of Garbo stuff.
Same boat, man. I'm playing against Gabe Davis, and I'm playing and then I had Buffalo defense, so I'm like, this is perfect, like evil laugh. And then all of a sudden, like they're indoors, so like that doesn't help Buffalo defense, and that helps Gabe Davis tremendously.
Yeah, like if you look at Nithershan's team, he has Josh Allen, he has Amari Cooper, Njoku, and Buffalo defense. So like half of his lineup was contingent on this snowstorm game, and I'm like, okay, I got a chance here. Weather help me out. And then all of a sudden, like, no, fuck the weather. We're going to Dome. So
yeah, I saw you picked up Deshaun Watson. Is he set to? I don't know if you already mentioned this, but is he set to start?
No, he's just starting
December 4th. Yeah,
okay.
December 4th against Houston.
Dude, if Herbert doesn't start, Herbert's been really fucking bad. Like, he's been so bad that Aaron Rodgers has been outscoring him for the past 5 weeks in a row. So I just needed some insurance before potential playoffs.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. Next up, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Colts. Philadelphia is favored by 7 points, and the over-under is 45.5. And the first thing I want to talk about is this whole Dallas Goedert situation. He was the 4th best fantasy tight end in PPR. His immediate replacement is going to be on the team is going to be Grant Calcaterra, who's a 2022 6th-round pick who only had 1 catch for 40 yards on the season. So you're probably not going to use him as a guy that you want to replace. So if you're looking in free agency, you already mentioned Dawson Knox. He's a viable start. Cole Kmet, if he's available, probably not. He's been very good the last 2 games. I think 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Mike Gesicki, also a guy you may want to consider. He may be available just because of the fact that he's one of those guys.
But they're in a bye week.
Oh, Mike Gesicki is not an invaluable option because they're in a bye week. Maybe for next week. Thank you. Good call out. And then Hayden Hurst, who is not in a bye week. Hayden Hurst could be a good opportunity for you to pick up. Those guys may not even be available, so if not, you're kind of SOL. But and then you might want to look at Grant Calcaterra, which I don't know if that's a great.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting to me because what's weird is when Goddard plays, the backup tight end is Jack Stoll, and Jack Stoll's caught passes with Goddard on the field. So maybe Jack Stoll is just a complimentary blocking tight end. And even with Goddard out, I expected Jack Stoll to be elevated as tight end 1. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is this Grant kid.
It's so tough to kind of decide because, like, you know, when even with the Cowboys, when Schultz was out, is it going to be Ferguson or is it going to be, I forget what the other guy's name is, or even the Broncos? So I don't know. You just kind of roll your dice if you have to and get this guy. But the guy you're talking about, Jonathan Cole, maybe.
I think this is rolling like a 10-sided dice when like the Cole Kmets and the Dawson Knoxes are gone. So roll like a 6-sided dice and just start Taysom Hill and be like,
Yeah.
I
agree. Steer clear of the tight end situation in Philly right now until we know who's going to be the guy.
That's a good point. So in terms of this game script, right? So Washington last week controlled the clock. They first forced turnovers. They ran efficiently a total of 49 times to beat the Eagles. And this was, we saw live on Monday Night Football, the Eagles' Achilles heel until further notice is their running game. So I expect the Colts to do a lot of that with Jonathan Taylor, and their offensive linemen looked pretty good last week against the Raiders and were able to run the ball efficiently. So I think the Colts do the same thing, and Jonathan Taylor has all the recipe to have a big game again. And we already talked about the Eagles signing Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. So that might play a role, but I want to see these old heads kind of on the first game, maybe make an impact right away before I say, okay, the Eagles run defense is something to be worried about. Until then, you still start Jonathan Taylor with, ease. With Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell situation, so that's a little bit tougher for me going against the Eagles defense. I think that you may want to look elsewhere if you have Michael Pittman. Paris Campbell has been the hot hand, so Paris Campbell might be start guy that you continue starting. Michael Pittman kind of worries me because of this defense. And on the Eagles side, with no Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, along with AJ Brown, I think we'll continue to feast. And Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, you continue to start those guys as well. But yeah, should be a fun game. Hopefully the Colts can use their running game to defeat the Eagles and have the Eagles lose 2 games this year.
Thoughts on Eagles defense against Indianapolis as a start? Or are you now all of a sudden scared just by seeing what Washington did against them last week? The silence leads me to believe you guys are a little bit worried now on Philly defense.
It's just there's not enough evidence, right? We got a new head coach doing some weird new schemes and shit over there in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And now there is an Achilles heel, like Shova said. Like, you just run the ball up the middle, but they just Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph are huge pieces.
They could just stand there.
Yeah, they're really good at stopping the run. So it's hard to say. I don't think I'd be afraid. I think I'd start them one more week just to see how these teams go against them. And then after that, then against a passing team, I'm starting them hands down. But against the running teams, then I'd probably think twice.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan is still the quarterback there. Matt Ryan does fumble the ball.
Sack City, fumble city.
Yeah. So you could still get those points.
Yeah. Quickly, let's go to New England, where the Patriots are hosting the Jets in a divisional matchup. New England favored 3.5 points, over under sitting at 38. This matchup, pretty simple to me. Wind is going to be a factor here. 16-mile-per-hour winds expected, which works out well because both these teams are run-first offenses. Interesting matchup, though. Mac Jones has the second worst passing grade against pressure, and Zach Wilson has the 3rd worst passing grade against pressure. Well, the Pats defense, 3rd highest pressure rate in the NFL, and the Jets defense, 8th highest pressure rate in the NFL. So I think wind, knowing the defenses get pressure, knowing the quarterbacks struggle against pressure, this should be a run day. So if you're a Ramondre Stevenson owner, if you are even a Michael Carter owner, or maybe if you're getting sexy and you're a Damian Harris owner or a James Robinson owner, this seems like a running game for sure. You're looking at obviously a couple of matchups here. Tyler Conklin becomes interesting because the Pats are actually 27th against opposing tight ends. But again, you know that there is a major bust potential there, knowing that Zach Wilson's a quarterback. And then you look at Garrett Wilson, who's had a couple of really nice games, and it makes you inclined to want to start him. The Pats defense is really good. Their cornerbacks have been really, really good in that scheme. And the Patriots are 4th against opposing wide receivers in terms of fantasy points. So I think outside of running backs here, you're a little bit worried. I mean, I'm more inclined to play either defenses in this matchup, knowing that there's wind, knowing that there's going to be a lot of running, less big play probability or possibilities. And then, the wind, if the wind wasn't a factor, I'd be sitting here and wondering, why is Nick Folk still a free agent? Nick Folk is a fantasy winning kicker, man. 3 weeks this year, this guy has put up 18, 21, and 17 points. Like, I don't even think 3 weeks out of the whole year, Jonathan Taylor has put up those numbers. So I think that's really interesting that the wind is a factor, but this is the number 4 fantasy tight end or fantasy kicker in all of fantasy football right now. And right now in both of my leagues, surprisingly, he's a free agent. One league, it's hard for me because I have Justin Tucker. You play oh, God, I can't bench Justin Tucker. But in the other league, barring some other historical kicker that you may have, this is a guy that plays in an offense that loves to run the football, that loves to move the ball between the 20s, and they're not the best at red zone offense. And the Jets, again, really good defense, but they do give up yards. So if the wind dies down by Sunday, if there's, some situation where it's not going to be 16 to 20 mile an hour winds, Nick Folk might have another 10-plus fantasy day with these.
The Rams take on the Saints on Sunday. New Orleans favored by 3. Over-under sits at 39. This is going to be a terrible game. The over-under's at 39. Nobody knows who's going to score a touchdown for the Rams. And the people that are supposed to score a touchdown for the Saints don't know how to score touchdowns anymore. Rams are 3-6. Saints are 3-7. You would not have thought that would have been this wins and loss at this point of the year for both those teams last year. But so, what I got to say about this situation here is that you should just stay away from the Rams for this game. Anything Rams related, just do not even touch it because you might get bad luck for 20 years or something like that. The reason you should stay away from the Rams, they're 30th in offensive plays. So you're not even getting enough touches from your players to even be worthwhile. They're 27th in fantasy points, so you're probably not going to get much fantasy points from them. 30th in real points. They don't score enough, so even their kicker's not useful. And they're 32nd in yards. Again, they're not moving the ball. They can't do shit. And now we're in a situation where we got Ben Skoranek versus Allen Robinson versus Vance Jefferson. So here is the big boy, big football move situation that I would recommend people do. I actually have all 3 of those players in my other league, and then I have Skoranek and Jefferson in one league, and I have Allen in our league. So this is just upside. You don't know, right? Someone's got to get those touches. Someone's going to get those 14 targets a game that Cooper Kupp was getting. And it could be spread all along. It could be just, 5-5-5. Or it could just be all Allen Robinson. Or it could just be all Vance Jefferson. We just don't know. We don't know. Matthew Stafford is very, it's hard quarterback to understand. He's back in his Lions days now. It's like Vietnam for him right now. He's just getting PTSD, thinking he's back in Lions starting lineup. It's just bad, and we don't know what's going to happen. So I think you would benefit, especially before going into the playoffs, just rostering as many of these players as you can. Does not mean that I'm telling you to start them. Do not start any of them, please God. Although I may have to start Allen Robinson if Devontae Adams is unfortunately not playing on Sunday. I don't know yet. But if he's not playing, I'm going to have to start Allen Robinson. So just keep in mind, just roster as many of these receivers as you can. Because this is one of the few positions you're in week 11 where we don't even know who the number 1 wide receiver on our team is. And that shit you should not just take lightly. Anytime stuff like this happens, it rarely happens in football. It always happens in the running back position, but it almost never happens in the wide receiver position. So just keep in mind, roster all the Rams wide receivers you possibly can if you can. And that being said, Higbee is going to get a huge uptick in his target share. He was a superstar the first couple of weeks, and then he kind of fell off for 2 weeks, but he kind of gained that momentum back, and now it's like an automatic start. So if Higbee's flying around somewhere, or if you're in that situation, as Shobi was talking about earlier, Dawson Knox, Cole Kmet, that kind of situation, Higbee takes the cake over all of that right now. And then running backs, please, it's fool's gold. Like I mentioned, the same thing I'm telling you about the wide receivers, I'm telling you not to do for the running backs. I know these are number 1 running backs, just hovering. They're like, hey, pick me, Sarah, please pick me. But no, don't pick any of them. Just walk by. Just walk by. Don't make eye contact. Just keep walking because this offensive line is atrocious. They're not going to get you more than like 20 yards rushing a game. So all that bad stuff being said about the Rams offense, the Rams defense is actually 4th in yards allowed on the ground and 2nd in red zone touchdowns allowed. So they rarely allow touchdowns in the red zone, and they don't let you do shit on the ground. They're 11th in pass yards, which is still formidable. But when your offense is that bad and now you don't have Cooper Kupp, it's, you're probably going to lose this game if the defense doesn't play top notch. So why am I telling you all this? Well, I'm telling you all this because Alvin Kamara is on the other side, and he's going to have a tough game as well, unless he gets a lot of catches. This is not going to look good for Alvin Kamara owners. However, everybody else, like Chris Olave, you just start. You start. I know he's probably going to get Ramsey'd, but you've seen what he's done through 10 weeks of football, and he's looking like a superstar already. So I think he's one of those players that it's become matchup proof already in his young career. Unless you have better options, which most people don't, when you're talking about benching Olave, you just start him. You just start him and forget him. Saints offense is 7th in plays run, 6th in passing yards, 7th in passing touchdowns, and 12th in rushing yards. So they're not, they're doing what they can to keep up in this NFL. They're losing a lot of games, but it's not due to their ball moving skills. So for that reason, this is my kicker game of the week. These are both teams that move the ball pretty okay. Mainly the Saints. The Rams are going to have to kind of keep up. They have this new wide receiver situation, so I expect them to spread the ball around quite a bit and something break free for somebody at some time, because these guys never even got the opportunity to catch the ball and show what they can do because their Cooper Kupp was hogging about 40% of the target share. So now I think we'll see someone do something here and do enough to get in kicking range. And then Will Lutz indoors has been money all year. And now he's going to get to play against a pretty good defense that doesn't really let you score in the red zone, but lets you move the ball. So I think both kickers here should have a great day. I think one kicker out of the other is going to be in the top 5 as far as kicker scoring for the week goes.
Nice. Always love a solid kicker analysis. Next up, we've got the Detroit Lions at New York facing the Giants. The Giants are favored by 3 points. Over-under is 45 on that game. The Lions are going for their 3rd straight win, surprisingly, but they're going to have a tough matchup playing against Saquon Barkley and Saquon Barkley is going against the 31st ranked team against the run that gives up 161 yards rushing per game. I know, Sweetheart, your matchup of the week last week was Saquon Barkley, but it may just well be this week as well. He's got a favorable matchup against the Lions. As far as fantasy goes, on the Giants side, you may stream Daniel Jones because the Lions are allowing 15 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns to QBs this year. It's that 4 rushing touchdowns for me that makes Daniel Jones a enticing streaming opportunity. Obviously Saquon, and I also like Darius Slayton, who had a touchdown last week. I think he had 4 receptions for 90 something yards, something like that. But he seems to be the guy that Daniel Jones kind of favors. I like him more than I like any of the other receivers, like, I don't know, Kenny Galladay on that team. Fun fact about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has completed 145 straight passes without throwing an interception. His last interception was against Dallas in week 3, and we are currently in week 11. Like, who would have thought? This Giants team is just not turning the ball over. Their running game complements is basically their bread and butter, and just holding the ball longer than the other team, allowing them to be competitive, and their defense is pretty good too. On the Lions side, fantasy-wise, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's got to be a must-start. If he hasn't been already, definitely is. Jamal Williams over DeAndre Swift for me. He leads the NFL in touchdowns with 9. And although Giants defense allows the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs, if you're going to go with one, I think you go with Jamal Williams. Swift, he got into the end zone last game and had inflated fantasy points, but Jamal Williams, it looks like he's the RB1 as of now on this team. Should be a fun matchup. Lions definitely have the firepower, but I think the Giants do cover that spread of 3 points and win this game.
I don't think Swift knows how to run the ball, to be honest with you. If you watch some of his highlights, he's running backwards sometimes, running sideways. Like, he just does not have a good idea of finding holes. Like, I'm going to send you guys some links and tell me what you think, because it's pretty bad.
Oh, man. Another one of those Najee Harris situations. It can't be good.
So it's like I see this on a week-to-week basis, man. I don't need to see another running back not finding holes.
Yeah. Not going north and south, but going east and west. Oh, man.
Yeah, like he's good when when he's in the open field, but to find the open field, he's having a lot of problem right now.
Let's kick it to Baltimore, where the Ravens are hosting the Carolina Panthers. Big spread. Baltimore favored by 13 points at home, over-under sitting at 41. Baker Mayfield gets to start as P.J. Walker is injured. The Panthers' secret weapon this year has been Deontay Foreman, who has been looking phenomenal, but he gets one of his hardest matchups this year against the Ravens' third-ranked run defense. So that is going to probably force Baker Mayfield to have to throw. And what's interesting is the Ravens are 22nd against opposing quarterbacks and 27th against opposing wide receivers. So do you start DJ Moore? Do you hope that Terrence Marshall has a bounce back week after shitting the bed last week? I think if you're, favoring anybody, or if you have to start somebody and you're desperate, DJ Moore is probably the way to go. But on the other side, you're looking at Lamar, who should play. Running back situation's a little bit murky. I mean, you probably have to deploy Kenyon Drake just because he's played and he's produced. But Gus Edwards is back, and Gus Edwards should play, so he's definitely going to seep into those touches. But over the course of the last couple of weeks, when Gus has been out, Justice Hill and whoever the other backups have been, they have not they don't eat into Kenyon Drake's touches for whatever reason. So because he's producing, I think he's warranting a start. Again, if you're maybe Nadershin and you're desperate, you're starting Gus Edwards. So I don't really know how to feel about that. And from what I've seen, it looks like Mark Andrews should play. So I think Mark Andrews is going to be deployable. Again, if for something happens pregame and he's not playing, hopefully you have Isaiah Likely or somebody competent to back him up. But on the Panthers side, again, if you're really, really desperate, you're starting DJ Moore. Otherwise, Foreman's probably the only safe bet. Ravens side, the desperate play would probably be Devin Duvernay, but Lamar, your running back situation, you're probably starting both those guys and Mark Andrews. But I expect the Ravens to win this game. 13 points just seems like an awfully high spread, but it works into the Ravens' favor with the game script. Panthers are better against running the football. Ravens stuff the run. I have no faith in Baker Mayfield to DJ Moore or Terrence Marshall. So the Ravens could quite easily pretty much cover the spread at 13 points at home.
Oh, man, I really hope Foreman has a good game. He's like my champion. He's the reason I'm hanging on in some of these other leagues. I just need him to do well. All right, the Commanders go down yonder to Texas to play the Texans, and Washington is favored by 3. Over-under sits at 40.5. Texans defense is 32nd in rushing yards allowed, okay? 32nd. That's just there's not a 33rd team. That's all I got to say. And so that means, B-Rob and Gibson, you're going to have to kind of toss the coin here. There's really no surefire start. I know there's a lot of upside on the Gibson side because of the passing down work. But over the last 6 games, they've literally had a 3-game to 3-game split as far as snaps, who has the higher amount of snaps in the game. And there's no pattern there. It's just kind of like Robinson had like the first 2, then 1 game off. And then, it's been erratic to say the least. So I think it's all a matter of whoever takes the hot hand first. And I think Robinson typically takes the ball first, at least in the first few drives. And being the 32nd ranked defense, I think this is a great game to start Robinson if you have him. And then on the passing side, McLaurin had a really good game last game. The other weapons are Samuel and Dotson. I don't know. I mean, if they run the ball well, they won't have to pass as much. And I don't expect them to pass so much to where all these receivers have a great day. So basically, you're banking on a deep bomb for Dotson. McLaurin's going to get all the third down work, and Samuel's going to do the gadget playing. So it's a whole different Venn diagram here. You pick your poison. But I'm sitting with McLaurin, and I don't want any part of Samuel. I don't want any part of Dotson yet, at least against the Texans. So the Texans have a pretty good pass defense. I know it's kind of weird, right? Like, who would have thought? They're ranked
because their run defense is so bad.
Exactly. You don't have to throw against them. So that by default puts them in the top 3rd in passing defense. The Commanders rank 29th in passing touchdowns allowed. which is bad, which is really bad, right? But they rank third in rushing touchdowns allowed. I expect some of these Nico Collins dudes that have a lot of high upside throughout the year. They've been shown sparks of some legit big play availability. I think they also I think Nico Collins had like 10 catches or 10 targets last game, so they like to use them a lot, especially in the red zone. So that's like my dark horse start of the day on Sunday, mainly because I expect Commanders to take control of the ball. They're going to be up like 14-3 at some point, and then they're going to force the Texans to start throwing the ball more in the second half, and that means a lot of throwing towards Collins. So if you're desperate, and I know we talked about some flex wide receiver players earlier, like the Christian Watsons and all those guys, I think Collins could have a pretty good day. I know that's pretty left field out of nowhere, but that's why we do this.
Yeah, and it looks like Heineke is going to get the start. So another Terry McLaurin season underway.
Yeah, I just assumed everybody knew it was going to be Heineke, because who wants to start Wentz? Come on, let's be honest.
True. All right, that takes us to the Las Vegas Raiders at Denver Broncos. Denver is favored by 2.5 points. Over/under is at 41.5. This is the second meeting of the Raiders and the Broncos. The first one, Raiders won 32-33, and they're facing, they're very similar in the sense that Broncos have lost 5 one-score games, and Raiders have lost 6 one-score games. Losing close ones usually points to some coaching changes that probably need to be made, some mentality changes. So they're just two bad teams at this point. Adams is playing against Patrick Surtain, so that's a matchup that I'm looking at. Adams averages 13.8 yards per catch and 87 yards a game, and Patrick Surtain has surrendered just 4 catches for 18 yards over his last 4 games. I'm not saying that he's going to shut down Surtain is going to shut down Devontae Adams, but I'm just saying that he has surrendered 4 catches for 18 yards over his last 4 games.
The good thing why that's not as important is because Adams plays in the slot as well, so he moves around a lot. So I expect them to avoid Surtain as much as possible. Yeah,
if they're smart, they will. Fantasy-wise, on the Broncos side, Courtland Sutton is a interesting start because there's no Jerry Jeudy. So 11 targets last game. He should continue seeing targets, and we say volume is the name of the game. So just for that reason, you will want to start Courtland Sutton and stream him this week if he's on your bench. Greg Dulcich, the matchup is really good for him. Raiders are giving up 5th most points per game to opposing tight ends with 12.2. Dulcich is a guy that's probably in your free agency because he had 2.1 points last week. And after, solid 10 plus more points per week, 2 weeks prior, someone may have dropped him. So if he's available, go pick him up. I even like Broncos defense against the Raiders offense this week as a streaming opportunity. And on the Raiders side, Josh Jacobs, you start. Devontae Adams, you start. Derek Carr, you probably don't. And you probably shy away from against this Broncos defense. But yeah, these two teams are historically really bad, and it's never been where they both are this terrible as far as record goes. The last time that happened was like in 1965, and when they played against each other, and the final score on that game was a tie game, 20-20. And so if you want to say history repeats itself, this game is probably going to be a pretty terrible long game.
Yeah, please tie. That means overtime, and that means more yards. But looks like Adams doesn't even want to play this game. He's a little scared of Surtain, so he's complaining of some abdominal problems. So we'll see how that goes.
In terms of a game that's going to be a lot more exciting than that, the Cowboys are traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings, after beating Buffalo in Buffalo, getting no damn respect by Vegas. Cowboys on the road, favored by 1.5 in US Bank Stadium. Over under sitting at 48.5. Again, we talked about it. The Cowboys coming off a disappointing loss where they were up double digits to the Packers, who came back and beat them. And the Vikings coming off arguably their biggest victory in the regular season in recent memory, beating Buffalo in Buffalo. So I think two teams, one coming in with momentum, one coming in with momentum on the opposite direction. The matchup in this game is going to be the Cowboys pass rush against the Vikings offensive line. So we already know about the pass rush. They're the number 1 pass rush in the NFL. Micah Parsons, obviously DeMarcus Lawrence and gang. But what's important to note is Christian Darrisaw, the left tackle for Minnesota, was held out all week with a concussion. And it looks like today he actually finally took off his red jersey and he practiced. So I think signs are pointing that he will play. And I think that's going to be huge because we cannot afford to have our left tackle out against Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And outside of that, obviously you're looking at a little bit of a motivational situation where Trayvon Diggs listed his 5 best receivers in the NFL, and casually he left off Justin Jefferson. So talk about the wrong time to make that list after this guy makes one of the best catches of all time and when you're going to have to face him. So I think Trayvon Diggs just likes to get burned, and I'm expecting a heavy dose of Justin Jefferson this week. And what's funny about this matchup, guys, is this could be a possible Odell Beckham Jr. sweepstakes game. The winner of this game probably has a really high probability of signing Odell Beckham Jr. So I know that there's been a lot of hints on the Viking side with Justin Jefferson talking to Odell and all this crap. And obviously the Cowboys situation, he's been in their rumor mill for weeks now. So this truly could be a winner take OBJ. So stay tuned for that. On the Cowboys side, we talked about it. Zeke is back, so you're probably starting him if if he's on your roster. You probably don't have other better options, so you're probably going to start him. But if you did have Tony Pollard, you're probably feeling better about starting Tony Pollard. At least I personally would. You're starting Dak, you're starting CD, and you're starting Dalton Schultz. We talked a little bit about the Cowboys defense. It's interesting because I have them in my other league, Vikings offense. They've been good, but in terms of efficiency, they're still kind of middle of the pack. So there's not necessarily you don't start the Cowboys defense, but I am a little worried just because I'm a Vikings fan. And again, the Cowboys, if they can't get to the quarterback and if the quarterback has time to throw, the secondary is very susceptible. And then on the Vikings side, Dalvin Cook should be able to run to negate this pass rush, and you're starting Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. But overall, again, this is really interesting because Minnesota coming off a huge victory at home, a place where they hardly ever lose, and the Cowboys come into this game as favorites. So something about this line screams extremely, extremely fishy to me. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on this matchup.
2 things. So one thing I wanted to ask you was, what did you mean by the winner takes OBJ here? What is that all about?
OBJ is a free agent. So whoever, these are 2 of the teams that are rumored to land OBJ. So he probably wants to go to a contender, right? So the winner of this game is going to have a high probability of signing OBJ.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And then I was looking at the top 5 guys that he that Diggs put in there. Stephon Diggs, number 1, number 2, Devontae Adams, 3, Tyreek Hill, 4, Jamar Chase, and 5, CD Lamb. So one guy out of all of those guys does not belong in this category.
CD Lamb.
Yeah. So I think he was just, trying to put his receiver
and there's no
in there.
DeAndre Hopkins in there. That's another huge disrespect.
Yeah. Two out of the 5 were biased. It's your brother and then your teammate. So they're kind of like auto put in, which again, Diggs deserves that.
Yeah.
But CD Lamb absolutely does not deserve that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's how many more times are the Vikings going to have to prove the haters wrong? I think after this, if they beat the Cowboys, there's really no reason that this team should be underdogs for the rest of the year in terms of anybody left on their schedule. So I think this is another, as if last week wasn't already a statement game enough, this is going to be another statement game because for some reason, again, we're underdogs at home. So
that's fine, man. I'll take a statement game every single week. That's what it takes. Screw the haters.
It's the NFL. Every week is a statement week, and it's a recency bias, right? So we beat Buffalo last week. If we come down here and lose like 31-13, everybody forgets about Buffalo, and they're like, the same old Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
Same old Vikings. So recency bias is the reality in the NFL. So we'll see. I'm excited for that game.
All right. Joe Burrow goes down to visit his counterpart in the division at the Steelers, and Cincinnati's favored by 4, over-unders at 40.5. I forgot whose interview I watched recently. I think it was LaShawn McCoy, who said Joe Burrow and Kenny Pickett are very similar. And then Brandon Marshall was in that interview, and so was Chase Claypool, and they panned the camera to Chase Claypool. And right after he said that, Chase Claypool's face went like this.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and this is after the trade. So now I think he feels like he has more. He's like open about how he felt about the Pickett situation. So, sometimes you don't need very many words to tell a whole story, and his face told me all the stories he could tell.
It's Claypool. I don't care what Claypool has to think about the quarterback situation.
Sure.
Not all past players are good analysts, right? And I think a lot of times you see guys just want to be like the hot take guy.
Oh my
And that's a pretty stupid hot take. I'm not gonna lie.
That's one thing I wanted to say is like I take nothing LaShawn McCoy. I believe that my analysis on football is way better than LaShawn McCoy. Just because he's played in the NFL doesn't mean he knows a lot of different things.
No.
So yeah. Anyways, just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I saw that on TikTok earlier today. Some things about the Bengals we need to kind of take note before I talk about individual fantasy players. Bengals time of possession is number 1 in the league. They know how to get those third downs and they know how to move the ball. They're number 3 in total fantasy points across the board on every position. They're number 5 in passing touchdowns, but they're 29th in rushing yards. Another Joe Mixon
Surprise
comes to fruition. He's having a career low in yards per carries, but he's getting those fantasy points because he gets to rumble in the end zone. The defense has been good, the Bengals defense, ranking 2nd in passing touchdowns allowed. That's a huge stat, which means you might want to stay away from the Steelers' wide receivers. But, this is a double-edged sword. They're going to be down. They have to throw. Who's going to catch the ball if they're playing against a 2nd-ranked passing touchdowns allowed team? You know what I mean? So, someone's going to have to score. And I think this is going to be a big Freiermuth today. I think if you don't have any of those players that we talked about earlier, those Cole Kmets are gone and all those other players are gone. Those Dawson Knoxes are gone. I think I'd probably start Freiermuth even over Dawson Knox. So he's very much I know a lot of people probably lost some faith in him after he had an okay week last week. So if he's rumbling around in the free agency market out there, please scoop him up and put him in your fantasy lineup. Freiermuth can't do it all. Sometimes the receivers need to help a little bit. And I think this week, the Deontay Johnson probably gets into the end zone. He hasn't gotten in the end zone all year. I think it's about time. What better week than a team where, you're going as a high-powered offense. You're going to have to score. I'm sorry, Steelers, but you're going to have to score. You're going to have to find a way to win by just more than 15 points. You got to score points. And Freiermuth can only do so much, and I don't know if Najee Harris is going to be able to get you 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Pickens and Deontay Johnson have to figure it out. I'm in a pickle here between Pickens and Brian Robinson. What do you guys think? Brian Robinson or Pickens?
Robinson. Yeah, Robinson's playing against a JV defense, bro. Right. There's no reason not to start anybody against Houston Texans.
Okay. Yeah, but the Chiefs, not the Chiefs, the Bengals lose their number 1 cornerback, Awuzie, right? So,
Awuzie.
So that could, mean that Pickens has a solid day. But I like Deontay Johnson more than I like Pickens just because of the targets this week.
Okay.
Yeah, I still like Robinson out of all those guys.
Yeah. I'm going with Robinson just because of the JV defense. It's just one.
And he's a guy that's only been a first and second down back, and you finally saw last week him get 25 or 20 plus touches. So it's like you're riding a momentum of a player that finally got the touches he deserves as a first and second down running back, and he's playing the worst possible run defense in the NFL. I think that's an auto start.
If there's ever a week to start Robinson, it's this one. Yeah. But back to Pickens and Deontay, I think with TJ Watt coming back, they're going to take Bengals offense off the field more frequently than most teams have this year. I know I told you the time of possession stat, they were number 1 in the league, but I think having TJ Watt kind of is going to ruin that for them. So that would mean more time to throw for Deontay, more time to throw for Pickens, towards Pickens and towards Deontay. So I don't feel too bad starting Pickens. I know, Shova, you said Deontay as from the targets perspective, but I'm going for the home run hitting with Pickens, and all it takes is just 1 for Pickens. You're going to start Harris because he salvaged the season last week in his make it or break it game, as I called it. So he made it. So he has to survive a little bit longer. So you're going to be starting him. And then in the Bengals, everybody we've already kind of talked about. Mixon, you got to start Burrow. You got to start Higgins. Boyd, you're going Higgins over Boyd. And then you got Hurst, who not many people have the luxury to decide between. So if you have Hurst on your roster, you're probably starting him. Otherwise, if you have somebody else over Hurst starting, he should not be rostered.
Yeah, I'm excited. We won that first matchup. The Steelers did, and I think it was week 1 or week 2. Week 1, yeah. Was it week 1? Yeah, week 1, and crazy game, missed field goals. went to overtime and the Steelers ended up winning. And that was with Chase on the Bengals. This time, no Chase. And we still have TJ Watt. So I'm excited. Hopefully we can repeat of what we did last week 1. Next up, that takes us to Sunday Night Football. Chiefs at Los Angeles facing the Chargers. Kansas City is favored by 5 points, and the over-under is 52. First thing I want to note is the injuries. We probably already talked about these, but the Chiefs' injuries, Juju is dealing with the concussion, and he is, I think, probably going to go to concussion protocol, whether or not he starts or not. Hardman's an IR, and MVS is going through some illness. So that all means that I like Kadarius Toney's chances. We talked about this earlier in the show, but Toney is a good start this week. And on the Chargers side, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I think that it's a tough situation just because they're coming back from injuries and haven't had a full practice with the team as of now. So yeah, fantasy-wise, Kadarius Toney, Kelsey, Mahomes, and even Isaiah Pacheco this week is a interesting start. 146.8 rushing yards per game allowed by the Chargers, which is the third most in the league, which favors Pacheco to get more carries over all these other guys in the Venn diagram that we have talked about. Mm-hmm. And on the Chargers side, the two guys that I know for sure that you want to start, Eckler and even Herbert this week. Herbert is not a bad start. Hopefully he can utilize his weapons in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But if not, then Joshua Palmer gets the start for you as a wide receiver 1 on that team, or even DeAndre Carter if you really don't have any other option. In terms of game script, the Chargers are 0-3 against teams with winning records. And guess what? The Chiefs have a winning record. So it's not looking good. Sunday Night Football, anything kind of can happen, but I think the Chiefs just have enough offensive weapons to be able to beat the Chargers. I don't know about the spread. 5 points. Kansas City is always scares me, but they should be able to win this game for sure.
If it wasn't for the injuries for the Chargers, and we were just talking about their whole healthy team up until now, I think it would have been a close game, or it would have been a fun game to watch. But this is just going to be Chargers surviving for their life, throwing downfield and whatever, while Isaiah Pacheco has the best game of his career and just running all over this defense.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Chargers cover the 5-point spread at home. The fact that they're at home, 5-point dogs, again, Kansas City, man, they're good. They're a phenomenal team, but they don't cover the spread very much. Mm-hmm. And they play a lot of games a lot closer than you would expect. It does hurt that Kansas City or that LA's defense is so freaking bad and so decimated with injuries. But I think they're getting their offense back. I think even if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both don't play, I think one for sure will play. Actually, I honestly lean that both of these guys will be on the field, and that's why I'm pretty high on Herbert this week against this pass defense of Kansas City. Let's end the rundown with Monday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers are traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals, favored by 8 points on the road, over under 43.5. Arizona has some question marks on their offense. Are they going to be with or without Kyler Murray? He is questionable. Hopkins had that hamstring injury we already talked about. He's questionable. If I'm leaning one way, Hopkins is more likely to play, in my opinion, than Kyler Murray this game. 49ers defense ranks top 10 in rushing and passing yards allowed per game. So it's not a great matchup for Arizona, who has struggled to do just about anything football related. Arizona's defense is 9th in rushing yards per game allowed. So they're going up against a team that loves to run the football many of different ways. So is this finally the first week that we see this 49ers pass offense become unleashed? Jimmy G becomes a solid streaming option against Arizona's defense. You're looking at CMC. Obviously, you have to start him. Despite, the workload that Elijah Mitchell got last week. The workload that Elijah Mitchell got last week almost makes you want to start Elijah Mitchell as well. But I'm personally still tempering those expectations. It's a better run defense. And again, push comes to shove. If you're, given a situation where you need to make a winning play, CMC is going to be on the field over Elijah Mitchell. I think that's pretty obvious. So that's where I'm going to be sitting in terms of those guys. Pass catching side on the 49ers, I think this week, George Kittle has the highest upside. He's going against a 32nd ranked defense against tight ends. So this is an opportunity if they are going to have to pass the football, if they can stop the run, if Arizona can stop the run or at least somewhat contain the run, play action, George Kittle, middle of the field all day long. Pass catching side, again, I'm of the opinion because I have Deebo Samuel that I'm leaning towards not starting him, but I know that's probably going to be stupid if I do that. But I have more confidence in starting Brandon Ayuk in terms of the receivers in this receiving core because, again, Debo's once valuable running the football situation is becoming less and less effective because they have CMC, because Elijah Mitchell's back and healthy. So because they quite frankly just don't have to put the wear and tear on Deebo Samuel as a running back when they have two more than competent and capable ones. So I think this is a week where George Kittle has an opportunity to break out. And on the other side, obviously for the 49ers, you start Connor because he runs into the end zone. DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays, obviously you start him. And here's a couple of guys that are interesting, right? Hollywood Brown, is he going to play? I don't know if he's been deemed active yet. That makes Rondale Moore, who's been seeing a lot of targets, intriguing. Obviously, Zach Ertz is hurt now. So do you unleash Trey McBride, or is there something to be said about Max Williams getting elevated from the practice squad? So a lot of uncertainties on that side. I think if Kyler plays, this will be a tale of what the next 4 to 6 games holds for that offense, whether it's going to be Hollywood Brown is back. He's going to take back his spot. Obviously not away from Hopkins. I don't think anybody's taking anything away from Hopkins, but having Hopkins and Hollywood Brown now be, the Rondale Moore-esque player in this offense, but it's Hollywood Brown, you feel a lot better about. And again, they're going to need a tight end to be on the field. So is it going to be McBride? Is it going to be Max Williams? We don't know yet. So I'm staying away from the tight ends on the Arizona side. But it's going to be interesting because this line is big. 49ers are on the road getting this heavy favorite action. I think the line gets smaller if Kyler is active and is going to play, but running the ball against Arizona has been something that teams haven't actually done as well as they would have hoped. So this could be a big passing week for the 49ers against Arizona.
Yeah, I just want to add that you probably won't start Trey McBride. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Max Williams, when he did start, he had a solid first week 1 through 5 last year when Max Williams was playing. He was a solid start, and then they traded for Zach Ertz, and then Zach Ertz came in and had like a top 10 season at the end of the year. But Trey McBride could definitely have that role as well. So if he's in the free agent and he's available, I would go pick him up, but not start him this week.
Yeah. Also, don't forget, Max Williams is still on the practice squad. He was actually released October 7th, but then they re-signed him to the practice squad 3 days later. And I don't think they've elevated him from the practice squad yet. So we may not see anything Max Williams related in this game at all.
Trey McBride season.
Oh, wait. Did you mention that Max Williams was elevated from the practice squad? And
I thought I saw somewhere that he did get elevated.
Okay,
but I could be wrong.
No, my bad. As of like 2 days ago, he wasn't, but I'm sure you made this like recently.
Yeah, I can real quick just double check Twitter to see, because I don't know. Which, speaking of Twitter, that's also weird, because if that goes away, like, where the hell are we getting all of our news? But I don't know. I'll double check and we'll look into that. But yeah, I mean, again, we don't know that. I guess the long story short, we don't know the certainty of what tight end is going to emerge on that option in terms of that offense. Like you said, there's a reason Max Williams is still there, and they brought him back from the practice squad. Again, I don't know if he's elevated yet, but he has been competent. And until the rookie proves that he has understood the playbook and can run all the routes and do all the things that he needs to do to be tight end one, you're probably staying away and just wait and see mode, I guess.
Okay.
That is it for the rundown, guys. Let's end the episode with giving each of our matchups of the week. I will kick us off. My matchup of the week is going to be Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert. He is going up against Kansas City, who Kansas City is 29th against opposing quarterbacks in terms of fantasy goes. It is a nice spot for Herbert here because he is slowly getting healthier, and he is getting most, if not all, of his weapons back. I think that is the biggest key here. Is I think, based on everything I've read, that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams will play on some level. Now, I can't guarantee that they're going to play, and I can't guarantee that when they play, they won't re-aggravate their injuries and get hurt. But I think there is enough weapons on this team. Their defense is so bad that Kansas City shouldn't have trouble scoring the football. They're going to have to play from behind. I think Herbert's going to have a 3-touchdown pass game in him this week. So I expect Justin Herbert to have a nice game, and he is my matchup of the week.
Man, I'm just like, I can't wait till I see a 3-touchdown game from Herbert. I just simply can't wait. All right, my matchup of the week is pretty simple. It's Josh Allen. I mean, he's been embarrassed way too many times this year, and I thought he was going to play in the snow and did not think I was going to use him in this scenario, but now he's got this beautiful field to throw footballs in, and he's got something to prove. He's got a huge chip on his shoulder. His elbow's fine. He gets to play a really porous Cleveland defense. So I think he's just going to have to prove something to the whole nation that watched him kind of make some boneheaded plays last week. So I think he's going to have to come out here and kind of tell everybody, show everybody who he really is again. So I think we're going to see a vintage Josh Allen just destroying defenses kind of a day.
Should be a good day. All right. My matchup of the week is going to be David Montgomery versus the Falcons.
Wow.
No Khalil Herbert.
You guys just doing this because I'm sick?
No. I'm just spitting out facts. I'm just spitting out my opinions of what I believe. And I believe that David Montgomery is about to go off. No Khalil Herbert. Foreman had 130 yards on the ground and a touchdown last week against this Atlanta Falcons. And the Bears just love running the ball. Yeah, they do it with Justin Fields. They do that really well. But they also have David Montgomery, who's been kind of overshadowed. But I think this week is his week to reclaim that throne of RB1.
Man, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I've lost my love for Montgomery already. And I was kind of hoping it was him, not Herbert, that got the bad end of that deal.
Oh, no.
I know. So
honestly, that would have been better for fantasy owners that had the Herbert handcuff.
For sure.
I agree with you. But, you just got to make the best of it. And now David Montgomery will be your rising star.
My knight in shining armor.
Yeah. There you go.
It's a good time to have one of the committee guys go down and you have the guy towards the home stretch of the season, right? I mean, That's always a great situation to be in, especially, again, with the emergence of Justin Fields. All of a sudden, every week defenses are going to have to be like, we cannot let Fields keep the football and run it 70 yards. And that just means wide open lanes for the running back. So I do like that matchup as well. That is it for the episode, guys. You guys have any final words before we head into week 11?
What was the thing that we were going to touch up on later? Was it Kadarius Toney versus?
Yeah. I think I don't know. Did you guys have a specific matchup? Because I was looking at my team, and again, so I talked about my receivers already. I have Debo, Williams, and Higgins. So if I bench Boyd, right, I have Debo, Higgins, and Williams, but I also have Kadarius Toney. So I'm looking at a situation where do I start Kadarius Toney over any of those guys? Higgins going up against the 31st ranked pass defense. Williams possibly going up against Kansas City, who's 28th against wide receivers. He is the question mark, obviously, because he's coming back from injury. But some part of me actually leans benching Deebo Samuel. Am I absolutely crazy?
Damn.
Wow.
I have nothing to lose. That's
also
right?
true. That's also true because you'll get the volume from the other teams, other players. So that's not a bad idea, to be completely honest with you. The only other thing is I think you should just monitor Mike Williams' injury report. And if he's like full go tomorrow or whatever, like if he's like looking super healthy, then you start him. But if there's still like limitations and pitch counts and all that stuff, and then you don't mess with that shit at all, and then you just start Toney.
The good thing about that situation is they play against each other. So if Williams at game time is like, oh, you can't go, I have Kadarius that I can swing right in for him.
That's true.
Okay. Do you guys have any lineup questions before we end this episode?
Cole Kmet or Mark Andrews?
Oh, I think you got to do Mark
Andrews. Mark Andrews if he plays.
Coming back from a shoulder and knee injury, this worries me that like he'll just like hobble around and Isaiah Likely is going to do the work. But Isaiah Likely kind of sucks. He drops a lot of passes, so I don't want to start him either. I don't want to start Likely at all. So now it's between Cole Kmet or Andrews. Cole Kmet is definitely the touchdown option for Fields. He doesn't like throwing the ball to anybody else. So that's my conundrum.
That's a tough one, especially with how hot Cole Kmet has been. But Andrews is just that guy, He's like
Andrews is the kind of guy that you just can't. You can't bench Andrews and then see him put up a day on your bench because you're just like, why did I bench my stud?
Yeah. If Christian,
but you can live with Cole Kmet on your bench somehow catching one more touchdown pass.
Yeah, absolutely. If Christian Watson had gotten like 8 points, just 8. Then, I would have felt more comfortable starting Andrews and just see what happens. But the reason I'm like in a turmoil situation right now is because I got to make up that 19 points.
Yeah. For me, my biggest concern is Deontay Johnson versus Michael Pittman. But I think this is it, man. I think this is Deontay Johnson the week. He's got to get into the end zone. He just has to. And
positive regression.
Exactly. He's like that Godwin. It's the same boat as Godwin. Godwin got into a touchdown last week. I think
little different boat if you factor in who's
Godwin's getting
the
balls
ball,
thrown.
But, same situation in terms of no touchdown.
He's getting more targets than Godwin is. And so, well, actually, they're about the same.
Deontay Johnson
Godwin's targets come to his hand.
Deontay Johnson is like the one outlier to like the target share and like air yard stats because like it doesn't matter how many targets and air yards and all that crap he's getting if the football is not where it needs to be. And if he doesn't catch it, quite frankly, right? So it's like he also has to help his quarterback out. Like his quarterback's already not putting the football in the best places, but when he does, Deontay Johnson drops passes. So it's like such a bad mixture.
I don't think Pickett is that bad as like he's not putting the ball where it needs to be. I think it's not that. I don't think that's the issue here. They're just calling plays that are for like 5 yards and for Deontay Johnson like slants on 5 or 10 under 10 yards. And
why do you think they're calling shorter routes for Kenny Pickett? Do you think it's because Kenny Pickett has shown a big arm that he needs to be running 15-yard post patterns in the corner? No, he can't, because he struggles making those throws. That's why they're running shorter routes. Obviously, the offensive line, all of that factors in, but there's nothing that's shown Kenny Pickett can throw the football downfield.
He did. So last week he did. He threw that deep bomb to Pickens on the right hand.
Okay, so we're in the NFL now. We're in the NFL now, and you can count on one hand the times he's done it. Do you think there's a problem with that? He needs to do that more than not do that, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's like every football game he threw 25 times. You're like, there was that one pass that he threw perfectly in the shoulders. Yeah, one pass in a whole game.
I agree with you. So those passes before, right? We're going to Claypool, and Claypool is supposed to be beating those one-on-one situations. He was doing terrible at that. Now that they're going to Pickens, and now that Deontay Johnson and Pickens are the sole wide receiver 2 on that team, I think we're going to have a different scheme, and Matt Canada will play with those strengths. And that
I think you're absolutely wrong, Trevor, but I think you're going to get a Deontay Johnson touchdown.
Okay. Once the season's over, I'm going to have a Shovit highlight reel of every week his blind optimism in the Steelers. Like this against the Buffalo. This is the week, man. If we can just stop. And there will just be a montage of all of this. That's fine. I'll put it together for you. Don't worry. That is it, guys. That's the episode. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us for another long-winded episode. Hope you guys win your fantasy weeks. Hope your team wins, and hope you win a lot of money. Will I get my first victory of the season? You have to wait until next week's episode. So be sure to tune in. Thank you guys so much for all the support. We're the only playbook and street card that shows that show it. Have a fantastic